So this story starts 2.5 years ago. I love volunteering at events for the Dalai Lama, actually. I've done it a few times. And I'm always looking at, if he's around in Europe somewhere. And he was in Hamburg. So I emailed them through, got these kind of German replies. I did the Google Translate. I managed to get there. I arrived, but I didn't really think it through properly because I don't actually understand German. And there was this moment where they said, okay, anybody not understand German? And I was the only person out of these 100 volunteers. So they're like, okay, that's all right. We'll just do everything in German. I'm like, oh, that's all right. That's not very compassionate. But one young lady came along and sat next to me. Her name's Alma, and she just started whispering the translation. I'm like, wow, this is really cool. Very nice of her. So I like nice people. I'm sure you do too. And so I became friends with her. And I said, what do you do? Okay. And she said, I teach laughter yoga at the Museum of Nonsense. She said that in one sentence. I'm like, say that again? Laughter yoga at the Nonseum, in Vienna. I'm like, no, I didn't know about that. And it's actually quite a famous museum. When I Googled it, there's been articles in the Telegraph. There is a museum for nonsense in the world. I'm like, wow, I never knew that could even exist. And I actually haven't had a chance to go there yet, but it's a proper building. It's been going on for years. It started by her parents. One of them is an art teacher, and he just started making random stuff like this tricycle thing, which has got 2 seats, which go in both directions, a gun for killing yourself, Super Bowls which have plugs at the bottom, and all sorts of weird stuff like that. And I thought, wow, that's a really interesting, playful way of working with museums. So that was in the back of my mind. And later on, when I was back in London, I was at a charity event, and I saw the carrots sit on the side, so I kind of wandered over to the carrots to have a carrot. And this lady called Vicky Johnson was having a carrot at the same time. And if we both weren't eating a carrot at the same time, this whole thing wouldn't have happened. So eat carrots. And we were both having this carrot, and she's like, what do you do? And I said, I teach mindfulness. I share mindfulness and meditation with the world. She's like, wow, I was just trying to manifest a mindfulness teacher, and I think it's happening. I've been doing NLP, but the next thing I think is mindfulness. I'm like, yeah, okay, very, very happy person here. Yeah, we could do it. And we just went to the pub later on, and she's like, what are you doing this weekend? I was teaching a retreat. I don't teach retreats all the time, but I was teaching one in Morocco. She's like, I'm going to come. When people say, yeah, they're going to come, they don't actually come. But she's like texting me at night, like, I really, really, really want to come in the next few days. So she came along, and we really got on well, and we started sharing ideas about some project that we could do together. And I was teaching mindfulness and meditation, which I still do. But at first I used to do it voluntarily, do it for free, actually in my home. And gradually, as mindfulness became a big thing, it became something that I could earn money from. So I was making a full-time living from it. And that was great. But I felt there was still something I wanted to do and to give, and there was something that didn't feel quite right. And so we were talking and reflecting about what we really want to do. And we were just on one of the boats in the Serpentine Lake in Hyde Park. You may have been there. And we were just thinking, how can we make the world a little bit better? And the other question that we were also reflecting was, how do we really want to share? What do we really want to share in the world from our hearts? Which is what we really want to do. Like, if money was not an issue at all, and we just could really do what we wanted, what would we do? And she was talking about happiness and well-being, and she'd heard about some stuff with Action for Happiness. And so I'd met this girl who runs this museum, and we started thinking about a laughter museum at first. I'm like, there's actually, if anybody wants to do that, there's no museum of laughter either. But we thought, actually, let's think a little bit bigger. What about maybe a museum of happiness? And I thought, she really loved the idea, and I Googled it, and there wasn't one. It didn't exist. So I'm like, okay, that's really weird that there isn't one, but maybe there should be. And then this guy comes into the picture. He'd invited me to give a talk here a couple of years ago on mindfulness. It was a workshop. And the moment happened, actually, I don't know if I've told you, but I was just sitting at breakfast time, and he was wandering around, and, I'm just about happy that I've managed to wake up at breakfast time. You realize what I mean. And just eating, just trying to make sure I don't drop the toast and stuff, just focusing on that. And Lawrence is wandering around and saying, oh, yeah, anyone to pitch a startup idea? I'm like, no way, I'm just trying to have breakfast here. And just really focusing, and he's just wandering around asking people, and he's just leaving the tent. And then that thought came to my mind. Oh, yeah, what about that museum of happiness thing? I should really tell someone about that idea. So I'm like, yeah, I have got an idea for this museum thing. And I can't actually remember his reaction, but it could have been great, or it could have been, okay, museum. Anyway, I'd never actually pitched any idea like this. It was a little bit scary, actually. It felt a little bit like Dragon's Den. I was standing here with the microphone like, I've got this idea for a museum of happiness. And I didn't know how people were going to react. So I thought it was a bit of a crazy idea. I've never met anyone who starts a museum. I thought they just exist. You don't think about how they start. And this Dragon's Den type panel were actually not like Dragon's Den. They were very friendly. And they just kept saying, you should do a pop-up. You should try doing a pop-up. And I didn't really know what a pop-up was. But the really beautiful thing is that as the weekend unfolded, people just kept coming up to me and saying, I can help you with the website. I can help you with this. Maybe you can do that. And there's two actual ideas that came up. One thing that people kept saying is that do a pop-up. Just try popping it up. I'm like, all right. And the other thing was, the other thing they kept saying is take it on tour, get into a bus, have a happy bus, go around the world just sharing happiness. I'm like, that sounds great too. So those two at the back of my mind, I thought, okay, yeah, maybe we could do that. But the vibe was really positive, and after I'd shared the idea, it looked a little bit like this. I love that photo. Look at Carlos. Happiness, 11 out of 10. That's me. So yeah, people were really excited about it and really passionate about it. And I kind of got that vibe too. And I thought, actually, this idea that sounded really crazy maybe could be real. Because what I shared with the audience is that there's thousands of art galleries, maybe hundreds of thousands of art galleries and museums. But the amount of suicides and unhappiness in the world, I just discovered recently actually, more people die from suicide than from war and natural disasters put together. It's a huge amount, it's a massive problem. So surely, we've got science of happiness that we could share with people. We need to create physical places where people can explore this stuff, not just websites. We need to be something where we can meet in person to learn about these things. So that was where we got to. So I've called this talk The Power of Love, and the first thing we explored was what were our real core values? What do we love ourselves? Before we start creating an organization, let's be really clear, and it's something I've learned from the Happy Startup people and other books. You have to be really clear about your values. What do we really love? And so the first thing that came up for us was mindfulness. I absolutely love mindfulness. And mindfulness ultimately is actually a love of life. It's a love of the present moment rather than a love of your thoughts about the future, your thoughts about the past. It's about celebrating the here and now. It's about being grateful for what you've already got, and it's being really, really present. And it's not an easy thing, but once you learn about it and explore it and you start to enjoy the present moment, it becomes a pleasant moment. So that was the first one. Our second one was creativity, which once I started reflecting when I was kind of making this presentation, creativity is a love of what you do. When you're doing the same thing, for me anyway, doing the same thing day in, day out, that's really frustrating. I don't start to love it so much. But when I'm doing something even a little bit differently, putting a little bit of my passion into it and trying something different, there's some creativity elements in there, and I'm really loving what I'm doing. So that was our second value. Our third one was community, and there's tons of research to show that 10 times more important than anything else when it comes to happiness and well-being is community, which is why an event like this is so important. We actually get out from our computers and phones and actually meet in person and build this community. It's so important for well-being and happiness. The fourth one was kindness. So being kind to others and giving things from your heart, whether you get money back or not, to a certain extent, doing that and having that kind of attitude. And Carlos kind of touched on that earlier. But then a fifth one, which we think was really important, which I've added in, is actually turning that love not only to others, but also towards yourself. So to learn about self-kindness and self-compassion. And that's turned out to be a really, really important value that we want to share with others. So Spencer was one of the guys who was here a couple of years ago when I gave my workshop, and he heard about the Museum of Happiness. And a couple of months after the Happy Startup Camp, two years ago, he sent me a message saying, Shamash, let's breathe some life into this Museum of Happiness. I'll come into a workshop, the science of happiness. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe that's our pop-up that people kept going on about. So we're like, okay, we've got our pop-up, and he's just going to give a talk on the science of happiness. And we'll also share some ideas of what a beautiful Museum of Happiness might look like. Maybe it would have a beach downstairs, and you'd have the first floor would be a lake, and the second floor could be a forest or something, and gratitude trees. And we just made up stuff, and we shared this idea with the group, and people were like, oh my God, when are you doing it? They didn't say, yeah, it's a good idea. Like, seriously, when are you going to build it? We're like, I don't know, but this is our first event. And we had to work really hard to get these 30 people in a room for his workshop, but people loved it. And then we did another workshop, and we spent hours and hours in meetings because we just loved it, actually. It was because it was from our values, it was from our heart. We were doing this in our spare time. She was working full-time, and so was I. We were just doing it in our spare time. We really loved it, put all our heart into it, and then we got 40 people, 50 people, 60 people from workshop to workshop, and we kept listening to people. We heard stories about how it was changing their lives, so we were really happy with that. Then I met one person And this guy's name on the right-hand side is Nipin Beta. This is the Dalai Lama. He's getting an award for compassion. And his organizations are amazing. He runs an organization called Service Space, and it's got 500,000 members in his network. And one of the things he does, you might have seen them, he created this thing called Smile Cards. Has anyone heard of them? It's about anonymous random acts of kindness. And the idea is that, like, let's say you go to a restaurant and you see another table and people are eating a meal. You're like, okay, let's pay for their meal and then just leave this card. So you call the waiter or waitress and you say, okay, we're going to pay for their meal. Don't tell them, just leave this card on. Pass, and it's like a tag, you know, pass it on, do some acts of kindness. So that's one of his things that he started. He started Awaken Circles, which are free meditation groups around the world in people's homes, where people invite you to their home, you sit in silence for an hour, you have a little bit of a chat and discussion about a certain theme, and then they cook a meal for you as a gift. No donation box, nothing. They're just giving a gift to you, and then you can go off in your own way. And he started Karma Kitchen. Has anyone heard of Karma Kitchen? It's the pay it forward restaurant, and it's like a pop-up. It's another pop-up, and the way it works is you go to a restaurant and these volunteers come in, they serve the meal to you. At the end you get a bill for £0 and 0 pence, and you're invited to pay it forward. Like, somebody has actually paid forward for your meal. If you wish, you can pay it forward, and that model actually works. It's worked in different places around the world, and in India it's happening each and every day of the week, so it's kind of all the time. So I did a laddership program with him, which is another free program, and I was really inspired. And some of the videos that he shared of the kind acts that people do actually moved me to tears, which I haven't done for a long time, or not ever, just watching a YouTube video. So it really, really touched me very deeply. And I wanted to bring this idea of giftivism, what he calls about, which is acts of kindness, and just thinking from that perspective and just see what happens from there. So on 2 or 3 days before New Year's Eve, I thought, oh yeah, we've got an event coming up. We're going to do another pop-up, and it's going to be in Spitalfields Market, because one of the people that came to our event said, hey, I've got contacts at Spitalfields Market. Why don't you do a pop-up Museum of Happiness there? So we're like, yeah, maybe we could get 100 people. That would be amazing. And I was like, yeah, we're going to have to work really hard, print out loads of posters and leaflets and give them out, and maybe we'll get 100 people for this pop-up event. So I put it on, I think it was the 29th of December or something, and I had the idea of doing it on the most depressing day of the year. Apparently the third Monday in January is the most depressing day of the year in England. So I thought, why don't we pop up with happiness on that day and see what happens? And that turned out to be quite a good idea. And I put it on Facebook, Eventbrite, free or donation. So the idea was the giftivism, so I made it either free. If you want to give a donation, you can. And then I turned my phone off because I was on holiday. And then a couple of days later, I opened my phone to check my email. And it was just, look, this is like, you can't see the minutes, but like every minute there was an order. And what had happened is that Facebook page, which was just shared with the 100 people that had been to our events, because they'd liked those so much, they'd shared it with their friends, and they'd shared it with their friends. And the Facebook page got 1 million views. And I'd randomly just put like, oh yeah, let's max it out at like 1,000 people per day. So it actually had maxed out for the 3 days, 3,000 people, and then like another 3,000 or 6,000 people on the waiting list. I'm like, what the hell? What just happened, right? It was just a small idea, and it just kind of run away from itself. So I thought, okay, how are we going to handle this? Basically, I had 2 weeks to organize an event. I was the only person working on it full time. For 3,000 people. But I had a meeting with someone, and he said, oh, some of them are free, some of them are donation, like people won't probably turn up, just open it up. I'm like, really? I'm like, okay, I'll put an extra 2,000 for each day, but we'll just see. And then again, instantly it filled up. I'm like, oh shit. What if they all come? We're screwed. So I had to actually reach out to people and get help. Like the maximum volunteers we'd had was about 5 or 6. So I had to ask on the Facebook page, can we have more volunteers? And people did volunteer. We managed to get 50 volunteers because we had to manage that. We needed another 50 teachers. Every half an hour, we decided to do a different workshop. So we had loads of these people. And I only had so much money on my credit card, and I'd maxed it out with the insurance and the ball pool, which a lot of people wanted. So I just thought, let's go with the flow. Actually, we had this voting system on Facebook, and the ultimate vote was, can we have a bouncy castle with a slide with a ball pool inside the bouncy castle? And then everyone voted for that. And then somebody else said, let's do it naked. And then even more people voted for that. So it started getting a bit crazy. But we managed to get the ball pool. We were going to put it in a Wendy house, but apparently that didn't work. We eventually managed to make a container for it. But yeah, let's check out this video of what happened. And someone made the video as a donation as well. So that was in January of this year.
My name's Vicky and we are currently running a not-for-profit organisation called the Museum of Happiness.
My name is Shamash Alidina. I train people to teach mindfulness and I'm co-founder of this Museum of Happiness.
My name's Kieran and I work with Museum of Happiness more on the creative side. So I take Vicky and Shamash's wonderful ideas about how to make people happy and then make that into more of a physical solution.
We wanted to create a platform where people could come together and explore the science and art of happiness in kind of a fun and creative way.
And a museum is a great platform for that, because I think museums are all about education. They're about learning something new. So learning about happiness, which is at the core of our motivation, at the core of what we want, and when we don't have it, then things become very, very difficult for ourselves. So I think that's why it's important to have a museum about it.
And we realised that there wasn't really anything else like that, and any other things that explore happiness, so different talks and workshops, would often come with a price tag as well. So we wanted to put on something that was free, financially accessible, so people can just learn more about happiness.
You can read about happiness, there's lots of information, lots of science behind happiness, but there's nowhere you can go and really experience it.
Well, today is a whole variety of workshops. Every half an hour we've got a different workshop, and we did a little vote on Facebook to find out what people wanted. The ball pool was very popular, so we got that. Another one was laughter yoga, so we've got a lot of that happening, several of that. We've got Bollywood dancing happening right now. We've had singing classes. We've had a talk about self-compassion by a doctor.
We've got colouring in, arts and crafts. We've got a gratitude tree. We've also got a happiness tree, so you can write what you're grateful on and what you're feeling happy for.
And we've also got silent disco, which has been really, really popular. So you're just boogieing away with other people, and then dancing, obviously that raises happiness and well-being.
It's been absolutely phenomenal. We've been so pleasantly surprised with the response and the demand. So we thought we'd get maybe 200 people the whole weekend, and we would have been really happy with that. And actually we got 6,000 people.
Why is there so much depression and sadness in the world? What can we do to share about science in a playful, fun way?
We're a facilitator of happiness. There are so many people here, which has been really inspirational, not just the people coming, but the people that are providing the workshops, that are taking their time, and they're here voluntarily, and they're here to give up their time to make other people happy.
I think together we can actually make a massive difference. And this was just an idea a year ago, and now we've got thousands of people coming in, leaving feeling happier than they came in. And some of them, I'm sure it's made a massive positive difference and may do for a long time ahead.
So this video was an act of giving and volunteering as well. Thank you. So it was just so many. I mean, you're clapping for me. I feel like you're clapping for that whole team because of so many people giving. Like this video, we weren't even expecting that to be happening, but because of people who found out what was happening and that philosophy of giftivism was going on, filmmakers came and they just suddenly shot this film and gave it to us. I'm like, wow, this is incredible. So it was an amazing event, and this pop-up thing really worked well for us. So then we thought, okay, what should we do next? And there was International Day of Happiness, and who's heard of this cafe, the Cannabis Cafe in London, okay? Peter organises some awesome kind of meetup groups for the happy startup peeps, and I actually met up with him in the early stages, and he was giving some lovely advice about starting this Museum of Happiness. Anyway, we met up with Ruth, and she loved this idea of the Museum of Happiness, and she's like, you know this Museum of Happiness thing? I'm like, yeah. She's like, well, I've got this little space at the back. Do you want to maybe just rent the space, and maybe we could have a Museum of Happiness there? I'm like, that sounds like an amazing idea. She's like, but the thing is, I want to launch vegan freak shakes in a month's time, so can you do it next month? We're like, whoa, we need to start a whole museum. We're like, okay, let's give it a try. So we just used the materials that we had, and we just did it as quickly as we could, and we said, okay, yeah, let's actually start a physical place for a Museum of Happiness. It's just happened very, very quickly, but maybe we can do that. And so we decorated it up using all the decorations we had from January. And then as I was driving into this event just a few weeks later, I got a text saying that, first of all, someone on Sky News decided to launch their gratitude app, and they talked about it on national TV. So I'm like, okay, that's amazing, great. And then I was driving in, and then I got a text saying the BBC is coming for your launch. I'm like, oh my God. Okay, first reaction was like, oh shit. So just a very quick clip of what they said as well, because it ended up on TV. And then
A Museum of Happiness has opened in the capital. Its aim to boost the emotional health and well-being of Londoners. Based in Shoreditch, it's offering a range of activities from colouring in therapy to relaxation, as Helen Mulroy reports.
They say you can't buy happiness, but these people believe you can train yourself to be happier. Author Shamash Alidina, youth worker Vicky Johnson and designer Kieran Walton have founded the world's first Museum of Happiness in Shoreditch. Inspired by the charity Action for Happiness, whose patron is the Dalai Lama, the non-for-profit museum will host exhibits and events which they hope will improve people's well-being.
So we wanted to create a platform where people can come together, explore the science and art of happiness, but kind of make positive connections with people, learn, explore, have fun, laugh together.
There's museums about art, there's millions of museums about science, but happiness is so important, there should be a space to explore it.
But it's not all colouring books and dressing up. The group offers workshops on physical techniques they hope people can implement in their daily lives, such as meditation and mindfulness.
We're trying to sort of help with the mental health issues that a lot of people suffer with today, like depression and anxiety, especially within young and old people. And it's about offering our services to them through the workshop leaders that help volunteer here.
The museum is based in the Canvas Cafe, London's first happy cafe.
We were already offering free programmes in emotional health, and as a happy cafe we very much aligned with Action for Happiness's ethos, so it's an absolute perfect fit that the Museum of Happiness comes here on site and makes us a happiness hub here in Shoreditch.
With mindfulness and meditation already being offered on the NHS, the volunteers hope the museum will see these techniques reach many more people.
It was really relaxing, and actually it's something that I know I can go home and do now.
Within 30 minutes or even less through these exercises, you again come back to the present moment, you again are more relaxed.
They hope to create a healthier and happier London, one workshop at a time. Helen Mulroy, BBC London News.
Great, yeah, so that's as kind of far as we got. That was, has anyone tried these freak shakes? Okay, what's the next slide? Okay, yeah, so just a final quick story before I finish. So one example of a story of something that happened. So this lady, she came to our very first Museum of Happiness event, and she had just gone through a little bit of a difficult time that morning. She tried calling her friend. Her friend hadn't really listened to her. She felt really hurt within her heart. She came to a Museum of Happiness event. I was teaching a self-compassion meditation, which maybe we'll do later on at some point this weekend. And she just managed to try and give herself a bit of that love. And that thing that was missing within herself, that sense of kindness and compassion, she discovered that she could actually give that to herself. And she felt so much better for that she started to volunteer for us, help us out, and support us a lot. So she ended up writing an article for Tiny Buddha. And it's got 3.5 million followers. That ended up being really popular. And I started following her work a bit more. And she shared the stuff about the Museum of Happiness and what she'd done. So one idea that we've had to be able to try and fund it is the Museum of Happiness is to run a conference, which I'm going to be doing in November, a Happier World Conference. And so she tried emailing this lady who runs Tiny Buddha, the CEO of Tiny Buddha in California, to ask her if she'd be willing to give a talk. She said yes, so she's coming over and she's going to be sharing about her advice of starting a community of millions of people which are really passionate about mindfulness and compassion. So it's a nice example of one story of many. We've had people who are suicidal that have come, and it's helped them overcome that and go to doing things like yoga. So lots of cool stuff happening. Just finish off to say that we really weren't thinking of monetizing it, just doing an experiment, just sharing our passion. And I was just really blown away by people's generosity and kindness. And so it felt like the currency wasn't money in the situation, it was love. And I think the money and stuff will come along as time goes by, as we continue to build this. But I really appreciate your time and attention, paying attention to this. And I wish you the best this weekend. You're going to absolutely love it.